Something big just broke loose in the Harley world. 2 million used bikes hit the market almost overnight, and every dealer's feed lit up the same week. They're calling it a correction, but anyone who's ridden long enough knows a crash when they see one. If you've got a Road King, a Street Glide, or an Ultra sitting in your garage, this story's already parked at your door. The warning signs have been building for years. October was just the ignition spark. Tonight, we'll break down what really caused this, what it means for real riders, and how to protect your bike's value before it drops again. The October dump. It began like a rumor nobody believed. In early October 2025, dealer feeds lit up across the country. One after another, listings for used Harleys appeared. Road Glides, Road Kings, Softails, Dynas, each tagged with the same desperate line, price to move. By the second week, even veteran brokers were whispering that nearly 2 million Harley-Davidsons had been dumped into used channels almost overnight. The surge hit every corner of the market, from private sellers on classifieds to corporate auctions in Florida and California. The sight was staggering. Rows of bikes once valued like heirlooms now sat shoulder to shoulder, their paint still gleaming, their owner's pride still lingering in the chrome. Dealers reported backlots packed beyond capacity, trailers arriving daily with trade-ins that nobody requested. What had once been slow and steady resale flow turned into a full-on flood. The used Harley market, the heart of American motorcycling, reset in a matter of days. Screenshots circulated through group chats, pages of listings stamped October dates, marked down so steep they looked like typos. Riders who checked their own bike's resale value felt their stomachs drop. The number on the screen no longer matched the number in their head. Some dealers called it a market correction. Most riders called it something else, a reckoning. For years, supply stayed tight, prices stayed proud, and Harleys held their legend. Then, in one strange month, the balance snapped. But the flood didn't start in October. It started long before anyone saw the first red tag appear. And the numbers behind this chaos tell a deeper story waiting upstream. The pipeline that burst. Long before the listings exploded, the pipeline was already groaning under its own weight. Distribution patterns built during the post-pandemic boom never adjusted to the slowdown that followed. Warehouses held shipments longer. Dealers stretched floor plans wider, and aging inventory quietly piled up behind the curtain. For nearly 2 years, Harley's domestic channels carried more unsold bikes than public reports admitted. When the slowdown hit in mid-2025, that pipeline finally burst. Dealers began quietly trading new stock between regions to manage storage costs. Some took units they couldn't move and reclassified them as demos, hoping time would make them easier to sell. Instead, those demos aged, losing value faster than expected. Corporate shipment data later revealed the warning signs. Trucks still rolling out even as retail slowed. Each delivery promised momentum. Instead, it built pressure. By late September, a few big distributors realized they couldn't hold the line any longer. They opened the valves and everything spilled downstream at once. Inside those same warehouses, the mood turned cold. Pallets labeled for delivery were rerouted to auction lots, not showrooms. Trucks rolled from docks to resale centers instead of dealerships. The public saw a sudden flood. Insiders saw an overdue release. A shipment memo dated September 29th warned, expect accelerated liquidation through Q4. The market just called it October. That's why the first wave hit with such force. It wasn't panic, it was physics. Too much weight on one end, not enough buyers on the other. The pipeline simply broke. Still, the collapse in shipments alone couldn't crash the market. Money itself was about to tighten its grip. If this crash already feels too close to home, hit that like button and drop a comment below. Tell us what your Harley's worth now compared to last year. Credit bite, cash rules. The shockwave reached the banks just as riders began hunting bargains. Interest rates that once hovered near 5% jumped past 8%, and for many credit unions, that meant a red light on motorcycle loans. Applicants who would have sailed through approval in 2024 suddenly faced new hoops. Larger down payments, shorter terms, stricter proof of income. In a matter of weeks, easy credit dried up. Inside finance offices, buyers shifted from asking, "What's my rate?" to asking, "Can I even get one?" The answer more often than not was no. Credit analysts flagged older Harleys as high-risk assets, too much inventory, too much volatility. For blue-collar riders on fixed incomes, that change was brutal. Notes that once fit the budget now stretched it thin. Dealers could offer extended terms or creative math, but those tricks didn't erase reality. Financing had turned from an open road into a roadblock. That's when cash buyers took the wheel. They walked in quiet and left with titles. Every dealership has stories. One man dropping full payment on an Electra Glide, another handing over a cashier's check for a fat boy that had sat for months. Cash ruled because it spoke louder than signatures. The old rule of thumb returned. Money on the table makes the deal, not a promise in the system. Out in the parking lots, retired riders joked that they finally had the advantage again. They weren't wrong. When lenders tightened, the man who saved wins. Then as approval stalled and checks bounced, another silence began to rise. The sound of trucks loading bikes before dawn. Quiet repos, loud lots, buy late. October, the faint rumble outside many homes wasn't an early morning ride, it was a tow truck. Repossession agents moved before sunrise, collecting bikes that had missed too many payments. Across the Midwest, storage yards began filling with repossessed Harleys, rows of chrome and steel waiting for their next owner. Few of those moments made the news. No shouting, no headlines, just the soft click of straps tightening over another lost dream. Dealers and lenders tried to keep the surge quiet, labeling it inventory recovery. But inside the industry, everyone knew what it was. The same banks that financed the boom were now reclaiming the aftermath. Auction schedules stretched longer than they had in a decade. Reserves went unmet. Bikes that once drew crowds barely got a single bid. Even the auctioneers sounded tired. "Next lot, same story," one said during a late October run. In the back lots, silence replaced excitement. Engines that once roared now sat cold under dust, waiting for someone brave enough to bet on their second life. Each repossession added one more line to the inventory chart, one more reminder that the market had swung too far, too fast. Riders watching from the sidelines saw opportunity, maybe too much of it. The question now wasn't whether prices would fall, it was how deep and how fast. For those willing to wait, patience could mean picking the cleanest iron of the decade. For those rushing to sell, it meant watching someone else name their price. Behind all the noise, the real story sits in the math they never wanted riders to see. Overbilled math, they hide. If you trace this storm back far enough, you find the math nobody wants to own. Between 2020 and 2024, Harley's production ran hotter than the market beneath it. Assembly lines built bikes faster than buyers could ride them. Shipments climbed quarter after quarter while showroom sell-through slowed. On paper, it looked like success. Revenue graphs pointed up, investors smiled, and marketing spoke of momentum. In reality, every extra unit stacked another brick on a wall the market could no longer climb. Dealers saw it before anyone else. Days supply quietly crept higher, stretching from 60 to 90, then past 100 in some regions. Bikes lingered longer under fluorescent lights, batteries dying between test rides. A few dealers cut orders, but corporate incentives kept the trucks rolling. Those quarterly charts that looked so healthy hid the imbalance, the difference between bikes built and bikes bought. The result was an invisible surplus, waiting for gravity to do its job. By the time the slowdown hit in mid-2025, the numbers could no longer hide. That surplus crashed through the market like an avalanche, burying both new and used values together. When Mike checks his bike's worth against last year, it feels wrong because it is wrong. The market is not mispricing. It's correcting a lie that ran too long. If overproduction cracked the frame, policy drove the nails deeper into the tank. Policy pressure points. While factories raced, lawmakers had to wait from another direction. Tariffs on imported parts, shipping surcharges, and state-level environmental fees all crept higher through 2024 and into 2025. Each new rule carried a cost, and each cost landed squarely on the sticker of every new Harley. Freight charges that once felt minor suddenly pushed retail prices past comfort. Riders walking into showrooms saw not heritage and pride, but a price tag that looked like a mortgage. It wasn't greed, it was math again. The company passed along every added penny to keep margins intact, and buyers paid for it until they couldn't. Out-the-door quotes shocked shoppers who'd saved for months. A touring bike that once left the floor for $22,000 now pushed $30,000, sometimes more. At the same moment, fuel prices inched up and insurance companies hiked premiums. Owning a new machine stopped feeling like freedom and started feeling like financing. So riders turned to the used market. At first, that shift looked healthy. More trade-ins, more circulation. But then the credit squeeze hit, trapping buyers between higher loan rates and tighter approvals. Policy and pricing worked together like twin clamps, pressing the middle of the market until it couldn't breathe. Used listings piled higher, yet actual sales stalled. Even bargains couldn't move because buyers couldn't borrow. The same rules meant to stabilize inflation ended up freezing the open road. Dealers, staring down those numbers, began rewriting the rules of survival from inside their own offices. Now don't let the market choose your safety. Check the description for the right kit. Dealer Survival Playbook. Walk into a dealership today and the smell of new rubber hides quiet panic. The banners promise savings, but behind the counter, every deal is a chess match for survival. With front-end profits gone, the fight has shifted to the back end. Dealers have learned to rebuild margin through fees and finance menus instead of price tags. Documentation charges, reconditioning costs, gap coverage, extended warranties, they all fill the space where real markup used to live. On paper, the buyer wins a discount. In the paperwork, the house takes it back. It's not theft, it's adaptation. Wholesale lanes are slow, cash buyers rare, and overhead doesn't vanish just because the market stumbled. Finance offices now play accountant, therapist, and magician. They stretch contracts, sell protection plans, and bundle small add-ons that seem harmless until the total lands. Mike's seen it before. One handshake turns into 10 signatures. The veterans at the counter aren't villains. They're fighting to keep lights on and payroll steady while floor plan interest climbs. But for the average rider, it means one thing: learn the language or pay the price. Out the door has become the only number that matters. When the dealer talks monthly payment, the smart buyer asks for totals. Dignity at the desk means clarity on paper. Yet beyond numbers and invoices, something deeper is cracking. The pride that built this culture in the first place. Pride versus price. For decades, a Harley wasn't just a motorcycle, it was a declaration. Every rumble from a twin cam or a Milwaukee 8 carried stories of open roads, calloused hands, and years that carved wisdom into the ride. But in 2025, that pride is colliding headfirst with falling equity. Some riders refuse to sell, polishing chrome that might not bring half what it did last spring. Others quietly post listings, hoping to unload before the next price drop. Both are right, and both are hurting. At club meetings and diner parking lots, talk has shifted. No one's bragging about new models or upgrades. They're comparing trade offers and loan balances. Men who rode 30,000 miles a year now calculate interest instead of octane. Yet in every conversation, a stubborn streak remains. Pride doesn't vanish because a market dips. It survives in how riders treat their machines, in the discipline to maintain them even when value slips. A road king with faded bags and honest miles still means something. It tells a story the showroom can't sell, a story about work, loyalty, and the years when you earned every mile. For riders like Mike, holding that line isn't denial, it's identity. The price may fall, but the worth stays welded into the frame. Markets change, but pride never depreciates. Out in the auction lanes, though, pride meets its harshest test as price gravity takes hold in the real world. Price gravity hits big twins. The first real impact of this crash hit where Harley's heart beat strongest, the heavyweight touring class. Road glides, ultras, and street glides once commanded prices that barely budged year after year. In 2024, clean examples still pulled 25,000 or more. By October 2025, those same bikes were listing for barely 18. The Big Twins took the sharpest early slide, and the drop was faster than anyone wanted to admit. Local comps now rule everything. The days of checking national guides and trusting one number are gone. Each region has its own bottom. In Texas, used prices fell first. By the time the Midwest caught up, the pattern had locked in. Dealers who had held out for last year's value quietly slashed stickers. Private sellers who refused to budge watched their listings go stale. Once one unit sold low, the next had to follow. That is price gravity. One sale pulling the next down behind it. For riders who still care about keeping their equity intact, documentation has become armor. A clean title, full-service log, and date-stamped maintenance receipts separate survivors from casualties. Tires under 5 years old, a battery receipt, or proof of oil intervals all rebuild confidence where resale once relied on reputation alone. The market no longer pays for memory, it pays for paper. Even for those ready to deal, the banks had other plans, and most of them weren't good. Financing, friction, and cash advantage. The finance window hasn't just narrowed, it's turned into a keyhole. Banks and credit unions have grown wary of older, high-mileage Harleys. They see volatility, not heritage. Loan officers now ask more questions than they did at the height of the boom. How old is the bike? How many owners? What's the borrower's debt-to-income ratio? If the answers don't fit their script, approvals vanish. Rates topping 8% and strict 3-year caps on older bikes push riders out of dealerships and into disbelief. Once loyal customers now appear as high-risk files, forcing dealers to cut prices and chase dwindling buyers. But cash riders, those who saved for years, rule again. Cash skips paperwork, kills hesitation, and seals deals fast. Sellers love it, banks dread it, and the market bows to it. For Mike, it feels like old times. Handshake, title, keys. The system may wobble, but certainty still wins when the money's real and the respect runs both ways. And while the cash crowd finds its footing, the sellers left behind are learning that presentation, not patience, decides who survives the glut. Sellers under siege. In this flooded landscape, selling a Harley isn't about emotion anymore. It's about evidence. The listings that move aren't the ones filled with adjectives or nostalgia. They're the ones that prove the bike's condition line by line. A clean V-in record, detailed photos, a walk-around video with a cold start, all of it tells buyers one thing: honesty. Sellers who document instead of decorate are the only ones closing deals. Across online marketplaces, patterns are clear. Listings shouting mint or perfect sit for weeks, while bikes with tire dates, service logs, and compression numbers sell in days. Buyers trust proof, not adjectives. For sellers, realism wins. Set one fair number, show receipts, and stand by it. A photo of a clean oil filter or a cold start video says more than any sales pitch. Selling now demands professionalism, not poetry. Treat it like a trade. Be factual, transparent, and steady. In this flooded market, honesty isn't just ethics, it's the only marketing that still moves metal. But for every seller posting proof, there's a buyer preparing to check what those photos don't show, and that's where experience pays the biggest dividend. If you want real talk from real riders, not corporate spin, subscribe now. We break down every shakeup in the market before it hits your garage. Stay sharp. Stay free. Buyers without blindfolds. Every bargain worth chasing hides a question. What's missing from the picture? In a market overflowing with deals, the smart buyers are the ones slowing down. They bring flashlights, gauges, and patience. They check seals, fork legs, belt wear, and battery codes. They sniff the tank for stale fuel and run their fingers along the frame for heat marks that betray a hard life. The inspection matters more now than it has in decades, because desperate sellers hide desperate shortcuts. A clean wash can hide corrosion, and a white swing arm can mask neglect. Every used Harley tells a story. Only patience reveals it. Mike's walked from perfect-looking bikes that failed daylight's truth, and that choice saved him. Value now lives in diligence, not discounts. A pre-purchase inspection costs less than one mistake. Check voltage, tire codes, service logs, and vying. Bring a second set of eyes. Patience protects more than money. It protects pride. In this market, the best deals aren't cheap. They're honest. Wait, watch, and when the right bike rolls into view, you'll feel it. Because the storm that wrecked the numbers has now reshaped how riders buy, sell, and survive in the months ahead. Corporate triage. By late autumn 2025, the chaos in showrooms had climbed its way into boardrooms. Harley and its major distributors began quietly performing triage. That meant fewer trims, fewer paint options, and a ruthless focus on what actually sells. Press releases described it as strategic simplification, but behind the phrasing was a clear message. Cut the fat before winter. Investor briefings revealed the shift. Gone were the boasts of expansion. Executives now spoke of margin protection and inventory optimization. It sounded clinical, but it meant fewer bikes, tighter warranties, and a pivot towards certified used programs built for survival, not glory. Financing arms tightened terms and quietly bought back select notes to steady cash flow. Dealers were urged to lean on service and pre-owned sales just to stay afloat. Harley was fortifying its core, not fueling its frontier. For riders, this means fewer choices but greater scrutiny, stricter warranty gates, slower approvals, and fewer flashy releases. The brand isn't panicking, it's conserving heat for a long, cold retail winter. And away from the stock reports and spreadsheets, small towns are writing their own survival plan. Shops and towns bend but don't break across the back roads and factory towns. The slowdown feels different. It's quieter but more personal. When new sales stall, small garages pivot. The same hands that once uncrated new Harleys now rebuild old ones. Independent shops in places like Janesville, Amarillo, and Sturgis have turned their focus toward maintenance, winter storage, and rebuild projects. They aren't just fixing bikes, they're keeping local economies alive. A chalkboard behind one shop counter reads, "Winter storage booked solid," while racks of rebuilt calipers line the wall and the hum of grinders replaces the old delivery buzz. These mechanics aren't chasing bonuses. They're working for riders who still believe in the handshake economy. Suppliers adapt too, ordering rebuild kits, bearings, and car parts once thought obsolete. Riders restore what they love, proving decline is just rebirth in steel. This is motorcycle culture at its core. Resourceful, proud, unbroken. Even if dealerships fade, garage lights stay on and trust grows stronger. Mike knows it. The same man who mounted his first tire still stands ready with a wrench today. Even with all that in motion, two forces are still squeezing this market from both sides. The pincer effect. The big picture looks simple, but it's brutal. Tariff costs on imported components still push new unit prices upward, while lending rates refuse to fall. That's the pincer effect. Squeezing from both sides, trapping buyers in hesitation and sellers in discount limbo. Even after the flood of October, the used market can't clear fast enough because money itself costs too much to move. Policy analysts trace the slowdown to overlapping forces. Tariffs on steel, aluminum, and imported electronics remain high, adding cost to every assembly line and crate. Combine that with interest rates above 8%, and you build a wall around the market where buyers want in, sellers want out, and neither can move without losing ground. Each rate increase stretches clearance times, erodes value, and deepens hesitation. The cycle feeds itself, keeping the buyer's market alive. For patient riders, leverage grows each month. For those who must sell, pricing to local comps is survival. Until tariffs drop or lending loosens, the pincer holds steady, tight, unyielding, and cold. Which leaves the final question every rider faces: how do you move forward when the storm refuses to settle? Holding the line. At the end of it all, the market's noise fades back to something familiar. The sound of a man in his garage, keeping his machine ready. The frenzy of October, the panic of banks, the headlines about collapsing values, all of it becomes background hum. What matters now is discipline. Buy slow, sell honest, hold steady. Mike knows that the best defense isn't prediction, it's preparation. If you ride, keep it maintained. If you're buying, study your comps. If you're selling, show your work. Let the market chase itself while you focus on what endures. A clean machine that starts every time, built by your own two hands. One rider from Ohio summed it up best. He kept his 2015 Ultra Classic through the crash, serviced it himself, and rode weekly while everyone else panicked. When asked why he never sold, he smiled. It still fits me better than anything new ever could. That single line carried the truth. The reckoning that began as a market collapse ends as a rider's creed. Patience, pride, and persistence outlast numbers. The market fell. The soul of riding didn't. From the October dump to the rider who endures, the story isn't about collapse, it's about continuity and the road that always calls you back. And at the end of the day, this isn't just about prices, it's about pride. Markets rise and fall, but the real riders keep their machines ready and their miles honest. So tell me in the comments, what's your bike worth today compared to last year? Are you seeing the same drops in your area? Let's get the real numbers from real riders. If this breakdown helped you see what's really happening out there, hit that like, drop your story below, and subscribe for the next ride-through of the truth they don't print on the sales sheet.